Ego death is a term that we see people kind of just throw around. And if you were to look at a lot of people that are speaking about ego death, they're doing it in a very non-detailed, vague way that kind of leaves a lot of room for people to think that it's just this psychological kind of experience. But the truth is, it's very raw and it's very in the body. And that death energy, we can say, that is dissolving these different aspects of the ego, will actually manifest through the form of, certain patterns, certain people, certain circumstances, which are all mirroring that death energy back to you. And it can do this in a way that if you're actually receptive and aware of it, it can be really scary to the point that you might even have a part of you that thinks we might die. We're seeing all this death, like, it just leaves you to wonder, is my time coming soon? And although this can be like an intuitive hunch that maybe the path you're walking could lead you to that point, but most of the time it's just the result of that death energy beginning to break down structures in your life and even internal subconscious structures and programs that can't go with you where your soul is actually trying to bring you. But oftentimes as human beings, we resist this process. And even to some of us that are, maybe more aware or self-aware than the average person, there's still going to be many ways we might resist this. And there's going to be many things that we're not really conscious of within ourselves, even if we're a person that pretty much wakes up every day with the intention to become more conscious of what we're not conscious of or what is in the unconscious. And especially if you're a person that works with the darker aspects of the occult or spirituality, typically you're going to be pulling in a lot more death energy, meaning you're going to have to make changes that are a lot more pronounced and a lot more extreme than the average person who's just existing on earth or the average person that's into spirituality or religion or, spiritual self-development in general. And when we resist this death energy, what it can actually do is amplify in its energetic charge in our life. And I have seen this happen in my own life in ways that can actually be pretty frightening, to where I've actually synchronistically been brought into experiences where, people have actually died. I might be walking the street, right? And maybe days before, like, the street was fine, but I'm walking the street that day and it's like, all these dead insects and dead animals in a way that's just really bizarre. I mean, there's no explanation behind why these, birds are dropping out of the sky and there's all these dead insects just lining the road, and it's like, whoa. What is the universe trying to tell me here? And a lot of the times, it's something that we have to let go of. As well, it's the natural byproduct of inviting so much death energy into our lives. I'll tell you a quick story. So, at a time that I started looping back into smoking cigarettes again, I would walk to a store that's basically on the street that I live on. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to walk to the store. Not only did I enjoy the walk, but, I wanted to get a pack of squares, right? And I noticed that each time that I would go to that store, there would be more and more dead insects and dead animals. And then when I would go into nature, I would find all of these mushrooms, and I don't really know how to explain like how they got like that. But these mushrooms would be like tipped upside down as if somebody like, plucked them out of the ground with intention and just left them upside down. And this was nature communicating something to me. And I was self-aware enough to know as it's happening, what was happening. There's just times I made free will choices to, basically tell the universe that it's going to have to wait because I'm going to enjoy my Marlboro Reds. I'm going to enjoy my weed, or, whatever it might be. Whatever it is that I'm potentially needing to build a healthier relationship with, or just let go of in general. But death can be something that's very physical and absolutely in the body. And ego death is going to be identity death. And we literally form neural networks inside of us that support the existence of certain identities. This is actually important to understand. We build a chemical dependence on feeding certain identities. So let's say you're a person who's working with like the darker aspects of occultism, and you're drawing in all this death energy. Maybe you're working with the Clip-Off, you're doing different rituals, you're contacting different spirits and entities. What is happening is a very uncomfortable unwiring, we can say, of these networks that have been telling your body to give you a feel-good chemical release when you feed that identity. So now that the energy is basically getting sucked out of that identity, whether you know this or not, it brings you almost, we can say like chemically, to absolute zero, which is very, very uncomfortable for most of us as human beings. And when it's accompanied by all this symbolism and these numbers and these experiences that you're having that are reflecting this death back to you, it's not only very uncomfortable, but it can be very scary because now your body starts feeling different. You're more sensitized on a nervous system level, and you might be wondering, what the fuck is actually happening to me? And then once again, the fear of death itself, which is something that exists deep in the unconscious of all of us, can start coming to the surface as you're seeing this symbolism and as you're sensing this death energy in your life. And there's parts of you that wonder, are we going to die? And actually, the truth is, when it comes to some of those parts, you're actually experiencing that identity in those fragmented parts of self. You're experiencing their fear of what's about to happen because they actually are about to die. And I know this gets a little complex, but if you're a person that was less connected to your, let's say, your soul, and more connected with these fragmented parts of you that are running on these subconscious societal programs and, stuff like that, because you don't consciously know the difference between you, the real you, the most, you can say, pure you, or the core you, because you don't know the difference between you and those parts, it actually feels like you're dying. And you might actually have thoughts of, is this the end for me? And it can almost feel like this very gloomy, very dooming kind of energy that sometimes can amplify its charge so much that you will feel crippled by fear. And this is a state that a lot of people will actually try to use the darker occult to try to avoid, even though that is so counterintuitive and counterproductive. Because even if a person can make themselves feel better eventually, even if they can make themselves feel better temporarily, to some degree, those feelings are going to come back. But more importantly, they're not making the authentic change that they could. And this very, for instance, let's say the clip-off, this very powerful tool of self-realization then becomes something that traps the person because they were not willing to work through the discomfort that that death energy is triggering to the surface. Now, collectively, we're all kind of at this crossroads, and we're all going through a death cycle. And the way I experience this might be different for you, and the way you experience it might be different than your neighbor or the guy that works at the store or, your coworkers or whatever. But there is a collective identity death that is taking place. And if you're in resistance to this, you might actually seeing it amplifying its charge, and you might notice the signs and the symbology of that death energy showing up in your life, and it can have a very pressurizing feeling. And no matter how uncomfortable, sometimes even how frightening this can be, I want you to know that it's a good thing. I want you to know that the worst case scenario of whatever your anxious mind is conjuring up probably isn't going to happen. And I want you to know that we can almost say there's a hidden hand that is guiding all of this to be, so you have the opportunity to step into a more authentic version of who you are. I want you to know that there is a universe that is you, right? A universe that supports you. But when you're going through a deep death cycle, like I'm explaining, you can lose faith in everything you believe in. And even that is something that can be very profoundly healing and very profoundly aligning, because it brings you to the core of who you actually are, and you actually get a clear look at the real versus what you are not. But sometimes it takes us going into these really uncomfortable conscious states to kind of dig out that more authentic version of us. So if you're a person right now that's going through something like this, I want you to know it's okay. I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that the universe isn't out to hurt you. You don't have to pick a fight with the universe or blame the government or blame this other thing or anything like that. And I want you to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to align yourself and ally yourself with death. It could be a very scary thing to do, especially if you're a person that's doing it in the way that I've done it, in a very deep and, raw kind of way that I continue to embrace to this day. There's so much reward in doing this, but it can certainly be scary. This is what I wanted to share, and yeah, I'm feeling led to stop the video right here, so that's what I'm gonna do.